Now let's discuss the Volume 16 of Sword Oratoria. While most of this may be the same content of Volume 21 in the main story, some of this content may not shown on main story. It already deep explanation, so we won't miss any important part. The Chapter 1 started with the roar of Raul, battered and broken, echoed through the first floor of Babel. It was both a wail of despair announcing the Loki Familia's defeat and a desperate plea for the rescue of the first-class adventurers still trapped below. As those words spread like wildfire, the world itself reeled in shock. The adventurers, guild staff, and townsfolk who had gathered around Babel are all frozen in disbelief and had their paralysis shattered in an instant. And standing at the front of that storm of condemnation, the only one still shouting aside from his goddess was Raul, and they are begging to save Finn and the others on the 60th floor. Covered in blood, Alicia, Cruz, and Narvi clutched their wounds and bit their lips, while Elfe and the others who couldn't even stand collapsed to the floor. All of them was in despair. But for Lefiya, none of that mattered. While she's looking to Bell as her only last hope, a ticket to a rematch to the 60th floor, he was the source of the flame that would never allow Lefiya to remain a miserable and defeated failure. That's why Lefiya, unlike the other members, was able to stand up swiftly even from the depths of hopelessness. Lefiya had swiftly pulled herself from despair, charged straight into the crowd, trying to reach Bell, but her leg suddenly gave out, bending awkwardly at the knee. It was simply her body's limit. In a clinic, Elfe, who had given up her own bed to a colleague who had lost a leg, was on the verge of collapsing into tears. She'd tell that it had all happened so fast, everything had ended in the blink of an eye. After Ice and the others had departed from the base until the dungeon began to rumble from far below. Then, as if triggered by that tremor, a flood of monsters swarmed to their base. Unable to hold the line, Elfie and the others regrouped with Raul and Lefiya, who had returned from the front line, and together they escaped from the deep floors. But along the way, they lost so much and many had died. Also, there's a level 4 survivor, yet now she covered her eyes with her bandaged arm and unable to stop her tears. Some of them blaming Loki Familia for the loss of their comrade. This latest attack on the 60th floor, though it should have been a duty shared among all factions, including the Freya Familia. It was a battle that should never have ended in annihilation. A battle they were not supposed to lose. Even if the mission had been a guild-enforced one, the Loki Familia who led the faction alliance carried that burden. And yet those who knew of the defeat of Zeus and Hera Familia to One-Eyed Black Dragon understood that in Orario there is no such thing as absolute in adventure. Raul was blaming himself as a coward and continuously telling sorry to Loki. He confessed his sins before his god, unable to stop the flow of tears. Raul tells that he left their captain deep inside the dungeon. Loki's lips trembled as she pressed them together. Then she drew him into her arms and hugged him. She didn't care that his tears and snot soaked her shoulders and chest, placing a hand on the back of his head. She pulled him close, holding him tightly. She had never given such an embrace, not even to Finn. And this scene was one Loki had known might someday come. She had never wanted this day to arrive. She had never even wanted to imagine it. But if the day came when Finn and the others were gone, there was no one else who could shoulder their place but Raul. In the southwest of Orario, Lefiya was standing before Baldur, the god of light, and her mentor Leon. Lefiya was pleading for help. Please, help my familia, help Ice and the others. Baldur said that she didn't need to ask because the Academy will provide Orario with its full cooperation. In fact, they've already begun. The teachers and several others have already entered the dungeon to make preparations. Baldur promised that every remaining unit would be given to the Loki Familia, and Lefiya could only bow her head in gratitude, as Leon said to Lefiya that he prepared the details and the school district is willing to teach her all the trump card spell, because she was the only one who could use summoning magic, and Leon stated that Lefiya is the only one who can still grow stronger in the little time they have left before the rescue mission. The massive army of the Ganesha Familia, led by first-class adventurer Shakti, was the first to march into the dungeon. The Freya Familia, of course, deployed as well. Every warrior except the first-class adventurers marched into battle. The hostess of fertility, including Mamma Mia, were dragged into the effort as well. Their mission is to clear the pathway so the main force for rescue missions speed up the journey to the 60th floor. This unprecedented speed was all thanks to Loki and her group who had been watching the battle on the 60th floor through the Oculus crystal. The moment communication with Finn's team was lost, and Raul's group began their desperate retreat, Loki and the others had rushed to deliver all information to Hayden. Hayden immediately drafted the rescue plan and issued orders for a rapid mobilization, commanding the Ganesha Familia and other forces to prepare for combat and launch a dungeon assault without delay. In short, by the time Lefiya and her group were struggling to escape the dungeon 5 days earlier, nearly every major adventurer in Oratoria, excluding civilians and lower-ranked fighters, was already in motion for the Loki Familia rescue mission. To come up with a plan like this in an instant and then actually pull it off, what kind of brain and guts does he even have? Hayden's leadership was beyond exceptional. Even the girl Palom could only describe it as demonic. Not in malice, but in how perfectly, ruthlessly efficient he was at dragging everyone into his plans. All in all, Royman, who knew all along that rescuing Finn and the others were almost 0% chance. Royman began to tremble while telling it because he hid the information about Thalia's ice garden. He's blaming himself that if he hadn't proposed the shaft construction project, those damn school district wouldn't have revolted and the competition won't happen, and the faction alliance could have pulled in Freya Familia and Hestia Familia, and Finn and the others would still be alive. Royman carried scars and traumas burned deep because he had seen the mighty fall of those once unshakable heroes who believed they could never lose and the gods' greatest champions. He had witnessed the annihilation of the Zeus, and Hera Familia was crushed by the Black Dragon, and that day Royman had learned what true failure meant. In the guild's underground altar, Freya entered the Hall of Prayer, and she was dressed not in the robes of a queen, but in a pale green uniform, as if she'd just come from her shift at the tavern. Many gods were gathered in the underground sanctuary, and Uranus proof of how grave the situation had become. The reason why Freya took the initiative is because she was very angry and telling, "They took my precious children from me, and I will make them pay for it," which means some members of Freya Familia had already died. For that purpose, she would lend her strength, whatever it took. Without a word, Raul accepted the status sheet Loki handed him and lowered his gaze. Raul has now reached level 5, but there was no joy and no excitement. A faint and self-deprecating smile crossed Raul's face. To him, this number 5 wasn't a badge of honor, it was a one-way ticket to the 60th floor. He left the status sheet on the desk and picked up his weapons. Loki reached out a trembling hand. She doesn't want Raul to go back to the 60th floor, but she stopped halfway. Something in her told her not to move, that this moment was final, and her lips pressed tightly together as she watched him go. The back that vanished through the doorway looked like that of a traveler bound for a farewell that would never see return. 3 hours until the dungeon departure time. Lefiya goes to where Belle is. Belle is sleeping, and as Lefiya looking at Belle's face, she unconsciously leaned closer to him. She held her breath, stilled her presence, and placed a hand on the bed as if to cover him and continued watching. She tells him that I need your strength. The answer was already decided from the moment she came back to the surface, and in the flash of anger and scorching heat, she found Belle as the source of hope. It was inevitable that the two of them would head toward that longing. Like a jester's merry tune leading her along, Lefiya had promised herself she would take his hand. So now she had to watch over him like an older sister. Sorry for dragging him into this, and sorry for abandoning the object of our admiration. The apology she needed to say stayed hidden deep in her chest, and there were so many things she would have to tell him once those eyes opened. So for now, she kept staring at his face. The moment Belle awoke, Lefiya told him everything he needed to know. Entrusted by Leon and volunteering herself to act as messenger to Belle, Lefiya spoke in a voice stripped of emotion, though inside it felt as though a rasp were grinding against her heart. Belle was silent through most of it, his expression changing from shock to disbelief to wordless numbness. And then Lefiya kneeled before him, and she said softly, "Please lend us your strength." She set aside elven pride, carved repentance into her heart, and bowed her head. And just as she expected, Belle's red eyes flared with light and said, "I will, but you have to lend me yours too." He took the card and nodded with conviction. Let's save Ice and the others together. Their departure, however, was not so harmonious. The city mobilizes all its familia and creating a continuous chain of high-ranking adventurers, securing the dungeon's route to the 60th floor. The main troops are holding the dungeon map must run without stopping and conserving energy for the final rescue. The Dream Party's sole objective is to descend quickly to the deepest levels and return alive with the Loki Familia and others. Raul is now level 5 and embodies inner transformation after the ordeal. He acts as reliable logistical support, complementing the absence of figures like Finn or Anakitty. His perseverance and non-heroic evolution become a realistic model for his comrades. Many obstacles arise. Dungeon bosses like Goliath in 17th floor, but defeated by school district students. Twin Head Dragon in 27th floor was facing Amazon girls, and Demi Spirit on 28th floor was defeated alone by Welf with his Crimson Blade. The others are forcing support units Alicia, Narvi, Cruz to defend while the main group advances. Their tactical coordination, sacrificial spirit, and experience allow them to overcome these threats and giving the main team a chance to reach the 60th floor as soon as possible. On the ice domain Thalia Ice Garden, which Finn and others are located, level 5 Tsubaki has trapped, and her body begins freezing toward unconsciousness and identity loss. She fights mental confusion, hallucinations, and extreme pain on the verge of breakdown. But she was rescued by Gareth and others, and she finally regains warmth and strength to move. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth gradually reunite. Riveria uses detection magic to find Amid, the saint frozen in an ice pillar, protected by a spell. Amid cast on herself before surrendering to freezing. This unexplored region, called Thalia Ice Garden, was sealed since the era of Zeus, and Hera Familia is now revealed. Members establish a temporary base, protecting themselves through Riveria's magic and Gareth techniques. Ice Garden's nature and challenges: the glacial region is supposedly invincible. No adventurer or monster is meant to survive here. It's death territory, meaning instant freezing. A region never conquered by any familia before. Yet hidden power dwells in its desolate places. Riveria alone, through her royal blood, can support the group with her elvish affinity and magical mastery. But she approaches mental burnout. Each magical attack erodes her strength, and the group depends entirely on her to avoid freezing. Certain members are safe, but others missing, or they are in great danger like Tione, Tiona, and Hogni. Back to rescue team. Thanks to flying Xenos, the main force reached the 50th floor. The entire group was welcomed by the Ganesha Familia Brigade, Freya healers, and various reinforcements, and they find the abandoned expedition base, witness to previous defeat of Loki Familia expedition. Emotion runs strong among survivors. Each assesses losses, missing companions, and necessity to advance despite all. The main forces enter combat mode, and Heath from Freya Familia joins the group under tactical orders. But at the 52nd floor, an unforeseen event occurs, a massive fire attack explosion, and Bell is thrown apart, but Lefiya joins him not to leave him alone, facing the path towards ice. The rescue operation plunges into chaos. Each must improvise new strategy in the dungeon's hell. Lefiya makes the mad decision to charge alone to save him. She destroys monsters in her path with purely offensive magic. Her objective is clear, and it's to save Bell, believing only he can be the one to save Ice. Using her silver vine magic, Lefiya pulls Bell from a monster's grip at the critical moment. She decides to abandon junction with the main force and continue descent alone with Bell. The leap into the unknown. Lefiya chooses the most dangerous path, descending directly through the dragon shaft to the 58th floor. Together, they leap into the void toward the dragon's roar, symbol of their own courage. Raul decides to leave the direct 58th floor route to follow intuition. Accompanied by Ryu and Leon, he discovers a group of gravely wounded Xenos holding back a new demi-spirit at the 54th floor. Understanding their sacrificial role, Raul helps them, triggering swift counterattack with Ryu and Leon. The Xenos are saved and grateful. Raul realizes he's finally acted as Finn by heroic instinct, without seeking glory, and he receives a symbol of friendship from the Xenos before departing. Next is Ryu's battle on the 58th floor. When they reach the 58th floor, the scene where Ryu fights Juggernaut alone was absolutely breathtaking. Even accounting for the level boost of Haruhime, Seeing the Estrella Familia's power surpass Juggernaut's was extraordinary. Ryu said that if she had fought alongside Elise back then, she wouldn't have lost. And if it hadn't been their first time facing Juggernaut, perhaps the Estrella Familia might have won without any casualties. Of course, Ryu is now level 6 and much stronger than back then, but Juggernaut was also powered up on the 58th floor, so the difference is negligible. Ryu casually fighting and destroying a 59th floor Juggernaut, being level 6 and level boost, or not felt like very cheap fan service. The Juggernaut is supposed to be the apostle of murder. It spawned more than 30 floors deeper than the one she fought before, and she absolutely dominated it. Even the magic reflection suddenly did not work anymore. Like others have mentioned, Ryu was the only one who could deal with the Juggernaut due to her experience in fighting it, and having prepared assistance with the unbreakable sword. Only Ryu know the method to defeat Juggernaut. Having Elise magic serve as the final blow was symbolic, a form of emotional redemption for the past. Even though it only lasted a few pages, it was one of the most emotional moments in the entire volume. I never thought we'd read something like this in Sword Oratoria, of all places rather than in the main series. Moving on to the 60th floor, the members decide to split into teams. Hayden, Haruhime, Ryu, Asfi, and others organize to immediately depart. Readers of the main series already knew how the groups would form, but it was still a bold and surprising decision. Evenly distributing the level 6 adventurers makes sense. Assigning Hayden and Leon to the team with less firepower and leadership was the sensible move. That naturally left Alan and the Gulliver brothers to join Loki's team. Since Loki's group already has Finn as its leader, they don't need someone like Hayden, and Riveria already fills the magic firepower role. However, personality-wise, this team is a disaster. Alan is an uncontrollable tank, and the Gulliver brothers hate Finn. Even Finn himself acknowledged it was almost certain they'd clash, and indeed, it's a group that could barely cooperate. On the 60th floor, main team must charge despite assaulting mutant creatures, multicolored monsters, and ice copies. Hayden opens the way with lightning bolts, pulverizing hundreds of monsters, aided by the Freya Familia's combined force. Thanks to data collected by Lefiya as Vanguard, they navigate the labyrinth faster and more efficiently, each trap anticipated. They encounter an ice replica, born from a corrupted spirit, entirely naked with golden hair, proof ice is fading, assimilated by dungeon evil. Unlike the Loki Familia hesitating out of loyalty before comrades' doubles, Freya fighters destroy the ice copy without slightest emotion. Other copies surge forth, but the main team surpasses them in cold, rapid efficiency. Teams split on divine order. One group pursues Lefiya and Belle to support the Sword Princess Ice rescue. Another group goes to meet Finn and heroes via a secret route between the 60th and 61st floors, overlaid on a map guarded by gods since Zeus and Hera Familia. Their objective is to enable a pincer attack, defeating corrupted spirits, and reuniting all survivors at the dungeon's heart, which means they should all meet up on the final destination, which where the corrupted spirit. So Raul, Alan, and others take the hero gathering route, which they have to find Finn and the others. They need to rescue them at any cost. Hayden, Ryu, and Asfi join the Vanguard team, the group who pursues Lefiya, Belle, Heath, and Leon. The hero gathering route, including Alan, 4 Gulliver brothers, Raul, and others, are forced marching in the Ice Garden return to present. Finn, Gareth, Anakitty, Riveria, and their group advance through the Ice Garden, exhausted but resolved. But Bate was impatient, and he scouts an exit and charges ahead to find Ice, Tione, or other survivors using the signaling artifact that Finn gives him, created by Asfi. When Asfi's magic illuminates, Finn understands Raul, and reinforcements from the surface aren't far, and this gives unexpected hope crosses the group. The ice prison, thanks to Riveria's detection spells, the team finally locates Tione. She's at the most dangerous place in the Ice Garden's heart, where all tempests seem to converge. Finn decides to advance immediately, guided by urgency to save Tione. Nevertheless, it's almost too late. They discover Tione crucified in an ice column, lost in madness and pain, her body broken and eyes now empty of reason. Beginning of the true battle at the 60th floor. Raul explains that successive demi-spirit appearances in the dungeon aren't random, but part of a vertical destruction ritual. The corrupted spirit's objective was to use its power to pierce the dungeon and recreate the Great Hole, to destroy not just the city, but the entire dungeon in depth. Only the Dream Party and certain leaders understand this hidden plan, based on demi-spirit's accumulation and activation at these key points. Raul hasn't reported the danger earlier because he knows his intuition would be ignored, and he thinks he's simply a high novice. Alfred sees through Raul that he consciously accepts possibility of sacrificing himself and dying to bring everyone else success. The Einherjar from Freya Familia finally recognize Raul as the key person supporting the hero's march. Despite his mundane aura, Raul becomes the vector of collective courage, ready to face death. In the Ice Garden, Finn's team discovers Tione, and she imprisoned in an ice pillar in the Ice Garden. Her mutilated and frozen body shows she's been transformed into a monstrous guardian. Her twisted limbs reform into ice weapons, and her mind entirely lost. The glacial curse infecting her body acts as this garden's protection matrix, making her a pawn in an ancient magical ritual. Any intrusion activates the curse. The captured adventurers are transformed into guardians protecting the sanctuary. Conscienceless, Tione fights her comrades with level 7 monster power, and she exceeding all human strength. Finn, Gareth, and Riveria face the ice warrior Tione, while Anakitty protects wounded Amid and Tsubaki. Each strike creates a cold waves. Ice invades their weapons and arms, and Riveria expends spiritual strength, preventing their own capture. Finn understands Tione isn't just physically imprisoned, but victim of mental and spiritual corruption. As she mutters incoherent phrases, and later they learned that it will be memories from Albert Wallenstein and his allies, Tione's voice seems to recall past conversation with Finn. Her question between the woman you love and world peace, which would you choose? And these words reignite his pain, facing an impossible dilemma. The other half of twins, Tione was parasitized by the flower monster of despair, while Tione was corrupted and became the Ice Guardian. If you want to know what happened to Tione when she was the most gravely injured of all members of Loki Familia, and she was impossible to be saved, you should watch our video of Volume 21 of Main Story, which where others was about to kill her, and miraculously, Belle saved her. Over on Finn's side, as battle against Tione transformed into the Ice Guardian reaches its peak, Divine Spirit's words resound, which would Finn choose between his love or the world. If he tries to save Tione, he condemns his companions, but if he kills her, he ensures the group's survival, but sacrifices Tione. Seeing Riveria exhausted and Ice trying to consume Gareth, Finn decides to act alone with remaining faithful to his captain role. Launching into the Tempest, he breaks the protective field and approaches the Guardian, ready to face both cold and the divine question. He then unleashes his magic art, Hellfinagas, the Scarlet Lance, a battle exaltation spell that literally sets his blood ablaze to heighten all his forces. Supported by his legendary skill, Noble Brave, he resists the Ice Garden's spiritual corruption. His heroic spirit remains intact, proof he cannot be tainted or frozen. Facing possessed Tione, Finn pronounces the choice every hero flees. I'll sacrifice neither you nor the world, and I'm taking everything. Sacrifice and renunciation, constants of heroic myth, finally become for him lies to reject. There was a clear setup between the world or her, foreshadowing a choice, so I figured Finn would save the day in style, but he went far beyond my expectations. His shocking solution to save her was a kiss. In savage gesture, Finn breaks the ice by seizing Tione and kissing her. I never thought Finn would become the second character to use a kiss as a weapon in a serious scene. Still, given that the Hellfinagas boosts battle lust but can be resisted through strong emotional control, a powerful emotional act like a kiss actually makes sense. Finn's action was in fact the most logical choice. With Riveria's green magical wave completes purification, the blizzard collapses and the ice melts. Tione faints and freed, while the Ice Garden finally calms. After the kiss, Tione regains her consciousness, but immediately there's another crisis. Unlike the previous ones who strikes Finn, it really reinforces the sense that these two are trapped in a loop of serious moments that always devolve into comedy. And everyone's reactions to the kiss were priceless. Ermid, blushing from her neck to her ears, Hiding her face in both hands was absolutely adorable. Anna Kitty, with her bashful expression, twitching ears and wagging tail, was even cuter. I was honestly frustrated that we didn't get an illustration of that scene. After that, a flustered airmid kept repeating the kissing sound, which was just hilarious. Technically, both the kiss and the touch could be considered medical procedures or rescue actions, so airmid would probably justify them that way again. Back to the serious part. What really caught my attention was how Finn's eyes turned red before casting magic. This ties heavily into Knights of Fianna, as Finn's hell, Finnegas, originates from the Crimson Lance of Oaths, which is fused with his soul. Just like the ancient Finn and Dim, it wouldn't be strange for his eyes to turn red even without using magic. But what intrigues me is, why did his eyes turn red this particular time, before the spell was cast? Was it because Finn's heart burned with such fierce determination that the lance resonated? Or was there some specific condition that he fulfilled at that exact moment? What matters is that even while entering the excitement state induced by Hell Finnegas, Finn managed to keep his sanity. Although his mental resources were partly devoted to Arya's performance, he suppressed his impulses through his noble, brave skill. To me, that felt like clear evidence of Finn's evolution, an awakening in the power of Hell Finnegas. Until now, the only time Finn managed to remain rational while using his magic was 7 years ago, as shown in Astria record. Back then, he maintained control thanks to the piercing light, though it was precarious and paradoxical, being sane while insane. It mirrored the old Finn who devoted his life to vengeance and sustained a cold fury for over a decade. But now, with his noble brave ability activated, Finn controlled the Crimson Lance of Oaths exactly like his old ally once did in the past, mastering the weapon through courage and drawing out all its power. In other words, from this point on, it's likely that Finn can ignore the side effects of Hell Finnegas, like the surge in battle lust, and completely control its full strength. Finn's potential when using magic is comparable to that of a top-tier adventurer. Maybe as the story goes on, we'll see a Finn capable of unleashing an even stronger version of the first strike of the Scarlet Spear, one that surpasses even his past self. Raul and the rescue team are in the central cavern, face final magical defenses. A giant ritual circle completes the dungeon's artillery preparation, called Six Spiritual Ring. While Alan and the Gullivers attack, the demi-spirit Golden Tulip activates the incantation at full force. The gigantic magical explosion strikes downward as a pillar, not skyward as planned. The creature first wants to absorb Ies and destroy the Loki family members at the Ice Garden. Raul understands that their battles against these creatures on other floors at least saved Finn and company, because the ritual, weakened by other demi-spirits' destruction, couldn't accomplish the greatest destruction possible. The entire team trembles but finally receives Loki's call through the Oculus, saying thanks to them, the Loki Familia's heart survived the destructive wave. Finn, Gareth, Riveria, Amid, Tione, and their allies barely escaped the Sixth Ring's vertical fire, which annihilated the frozen ice garden. The group was exhausted but alive, reaches the demonic world's heart organic territory, where walls are composed of pulsing flesh and blood. Amid heals Tione. She's still unconscious, while Finn deduces without proof that Raul and the Freya team voluntarily reduced the explosion's power to save their lives toward the last sanctuary. After Finn group escape from the Ice Garden, Lefiya, Belle, Tione, and Leon penetrate deeper, and they feel the corrupted spirit's power growing. Magic-charged wind blows from the abyss, but twisted, painful, impure. The ceiling glimmers and an immense jewel shatters, and surges a woman with black hair and divine beauty. It was the Black Lady Ice Wallenstein, corrupted copy, but adult and majestic. The Black Lady pronounces a name tinged with sweetness and dread, pronouncing the name Arya. Belle attempts to attack with firebolt, but the spell diverted by a mere breath of this black maiden and explodes without touching her. She responds with a whisper and drawing a black wind lance piercing Belle's shoulder and lacerated by successive strikes. Lefiya and Tione are blown away. Their broken bodies crash into depths, while the black wind annihilates everything in its path. The gods realize that this creature is the demonic world's supreme guardian, created from ice memory and magic, the projection of her mother. Aria, the great wind spirit queen. The Black Lady is the perfect materialization of ice dream and trauma, an absolute beauty fused with annihilating power. Bel and Lefiya are gravely wounded, and the black wind descends to finish them, and everything becomes absolute darkness, until light pierces the shadows. A voice resounds, and it was the arrival of Leon Trigger's counterattack, marking the true beginning of final confrontation against Black Lady. While the Black Lady is until now invincible, repelled magical assaults with a breath. Leon the Teacher Knight emerges with a light sword to force Aria into serious defense. Their confrontation becomes pure duel, and Leon doesn't hesitate risking his life in close combat, refusing all caution, embodying adults' self-denial to protect Bel and others. With each new sword invoked by his superior magic blaze of round, Leon repels the Black Lady, his unshakable will serving as rampart for Bel, Lefiya, and Tione, galvanizing all observing. Facing Black Lady, Leon divides the battle, serving as shield enabling Bel and others retreat. While Leon holds the Black Lady, Bel carries Tione in his arms and flees through flesh maze, Lefiya at his side, both wounded but driven by urgency. Lefiya, devastated, she recites and invokes her most powerful magic's Levitain, the flame walls covering the battlefield, to stop monsters' progression and guarantee escape. Lefiya suffers dramatic wound, and her left arm torn by corrupted spirit shock waves, replaying Filvis's traumas. But she doesn't yield, recalling true despair is never the end. She transforms pain into power, annihilates enemies with ultimate spell, broken but smiling, passes the relay to Bel. And Bel and Tione leave Lefiya there, just like Leon did, to fight the Black Lady. On the other side, Finn's group discovers the dungeon's brain room, a sinister organic cavity with unfinished structure directly linked to magical flux from ice. From this cavity's heart bursts a feminine, majestic creature, naked, with a third eye, horns, and serpentine tail connected to magical sphere. Her hybrid aspect recalls Aria and a fallen spirit simultaneously. She possesses ice voice, gestures, and magic, but also a corrupted spirit's malice and cruelty, addressing Finn and others by name and everything simultaneously familiar. Finn, knowing the stakes, accepts the challenge, and he prepares and enchants his ultimate magic. The entire Familia reacts to every opening. Gareth attacks. Riveria throws magic javelin. Tsubaki strikes. Tione charges. Amid and Anakitty support. Everyone strikes in concert, creating decisive breach. Finn's ultimate attack only cracked the wall's surface without piercing through. An invisible presence of unknown power had stopped the lance mid-flight, revealing the creature fully incarnated, the monstrous ice with golden hair and dragon pupils, bursting with laughter, claiming she'd read Aria's offering to become perfect. This ice replica wasn't merely the Sullied's fusion. It was a demon designed to counter Finn's very weapon. This monster, called the Slaughter Emperor Regina's, surpasses all dungeon logic. When Finn seeks new opening, the monster attacked Gareth, breaks Riveria's defense, and sweeps Tione, Tsubaki, and others with impossible-to-follow attack sequences. Its voice, simultaneously seductive and sadistic, echoes in the chamber, laughing at their weakness, while the giant uterus behind it pulses like living heart. Finn then realizes that this chamber is nothing but experimental cradle, designed to birth this monster. Above them, the true corrupted spirit's brain houses a second forming organ, a heart linked to absorbed ice Wallenstein. The dungeon is divided into 3 biological enclosures. The brain serves as the seat of control, the heart is a new energy source where true ice located, and the cradle or uterus where Regina's was born. Finn understands they face demonic trinity, and each destined for one battlefield: control, magic, and destruction. While Bel and his group fight on the surface, Finn wages inner battle with exhausted Loki Familia. Regina's not only imitates ice movements, but also Revis, the former enemy, now integrated into its memory. The creature combines brute strength with tactical intelligence, making all cunning ineffective. Amid's healings save their lives 17 times, but the group exhausts, and Riveria was out of magic. She cannot employ her supreme spell. It's then a shock from ceiling interrupts the healer, and Silver Lance pierces Regina's. The Einherjar arrived from Freya Familia, followed by long-awaited reinforcements. Raul and four Yanjin brothers dropping weapons and support potions to survivors, and replacement of blades for Tione and Tsubaki, and mental potions for Amid and Riveria. Finn then directs Einherjar reinforcements, Alan, Alfrig, and others against Regina's. Despite combined power of Orario's best warriors, Regina's absorbs blows and regenerates instantly severed limbs. With each violence burst, the monster counterattacks, arms and tentacles elongated whirl, crushing and hurling Freya Familia warriors far like mere toys. At each violence barrage, the monster laughs. Its overwhelming regeneration shatters all tactical hope. It uses Icewind techniques and learned movements from Revis, surpassing even Alan, the fastest of all. Regina's then prepares his greatest attack, a star flare, a green and white energy sphere, like a destructive supernova. Raul, though exhausted, throws himself as human shield, stopping the ray explosion at body's cost, in act of heroic resistance. He endures annihilation slowly, maintains barrier seconds longer than impossible, and finally smiles before being reduced to nothing, fulfilling his protection promise. Just after Raul's sacrificial death, while everyone is shocked by Raul, Regina's prepares to launch second flare attack on survivors. It's then a black hurricane surges and hits Regina's head-on. Asterius, the mightiest warrior of Xenos, enters the scene. He triggers explosion and physically confronts Regina's, hurling him into the wall. Survivors, at force's end, contemplate this titanic duel from Regina's and Asterius, the first true counterweight to the invincible monster. Finally, Lefiya arrives. She was missing and armed and exhausted but alive, determined to play her ultimate role in this symphony of chaos. After Bel and Tione left Lefiya alone, Bel and Tione was about to die and Asterius saved them, but Asterius said he can't control himself if he was with Bel, so he decided to be left behind. Asterius alone facing all the spirit remnants. That's when Asterius finds the dying Lefiya and save her. At Raul's death, Lefiya literally sees his shadow disappear. He fulfilled his duty, atoning for his coward past. This heroic conversion triggers general counterattack. Finn, Gareth, Tione, Riveria, and others rise to give meaning to his sacrifice. Asterius, the Black Bull mightiest warrior of the Xenos, becomes the front's pivot, rallying groups' rage and hope around himself. Despite wall of defeats, Lefiya rises, one-armed and unable, stopping her bleeding. She then intones her luminous chant, transforming her own despair into weapon. Supported by Riveria, Lefiya unleashes self-guided wind spell, annihilating first clones for the first time, and the team regains balance. But Regina's engenders 40 more copies, and their victory remains impossible. At moment, everything crumbles. Asterius defeated, Finn cornered, but Lefiya continues singing, not Requiem, but Triumph Song, recalling initial dreams' promise. Combined Lefiya resonance and Riveria's magic create First Fissure. Regina's structure begins collapsing. In parallel, Fells enters the play, deploying Total Healing Spell, instantly mending entire Loki and Freya Familia front. At this moment, wave of offensives and heroic chants sweeps dungeon surface. Reinforcements flow in, including Fells's magical golems, mobile healing zones, and entire waves of adventurers and former allied enemies. Regina's, exhausted, retreats toward Ice Dark World, desperately seeking to claim Aria's final breath. Finn, Alfrig, Gareth, Tione, and Alan coordinate 5 devastating impacts. They slash its arms, and for first time, his regeneration fails. It's then Lefiya, one-armed at death's gates, decides intoning most dangerous magic forbidden ultimate chant, triggered while surrounded by Regina's copies. Time seems to stop. Facing death, she repels attack after attack, each incantation fragment of her promise and past. Lefiya strikes forbidden spell Einzel. It's not a simple magic created a double. The White Priestess, protecting Lefiya, is Faithful Trace, incarnated through promise and love of Filvis herself, returned as magical guide and soul sister. Lefiya, supported by this aid, enchants Rhea Levatine, setting Regina's ablaze with divine brazier. Unable, regenerating, and overwhelmed by flames. In final light explosion, Battlefield singing victory. Lefiya and Filvis reunite. Promise, let's see crown of light together. Filvis, pure grace act, returns. Lepia's lost arm as fairy light. Symbol of healing, transmission, and broken souls reunification. This gesture is neither classic regeneration nor simple illusion, but Double Ring's ultimate miracle, a proper to this chant fairy gathering. While Underworld collapses before their eyes, main members Fels, Finn, Riveria, Gareth, and Asterius reaffirm enemy defeat and Lepia's safety. Fels, the sage, attempts consoling Anakitty, weeping Raul's death until miracle occurs. Raul, saved by carbuncle barrier, rises unharmed. Their comic and teary embrace caps this life return miracle. As for epilogue on Tione's POV, we understand she could permanently lose her arm. Tione remains quasi-amnesia regarding Ice Garden's 60 subfloor events. Her memories limit to impression of intense cold, whiteness, silence, and blue seeming like God's terrain arrival, and silhouette of elf resembling Riveria. It was Keldia, a name pronounced by her as Waldstein, at the Thalia Ice Garden Center.